He says not only considerate, but submissive. Well, we don't like that. We don't like the idea that, well, I have to submit to somebody. I want to be the boss. You know, I want people to submit to me, but I don't want to submit to anybody else. There's an interesting statement in the 5th chapter of the book of Ephesians, where just before Paul talks about husbands and wives being in submission to your own husbands, he has a very interesting statement that he says in the verse just above that. He said, submit to one another. To me, the most challenging statement in the entire Bible. And the reason is that it's an impossible thing. We can't submit to one another. We just can't do that. We can compromise, but he didn't say compromise with each other. We can switch places, and I'll do it your way this time and you do it my way the next time. But that's not really submitting to each other. Again, that's a compromise. Why did Paul give us something that was impossible for us to do? Because he was trying to emphasize the idea that, and he goes on and talks about wives submitting to their husbands, and talks about slaves and freedmen in his society. He talked about children, obey your parents, and this sort of thing. But the idea is we need to learn to be yielding people. It's the opposite of being stubborn. We need to learn to yield to people, to give way, to be willing to submit. When husbands and wives forget about the importance of submitting to each other, when husbands and wives begin taking polarized positions, you see things deteriorate. Be submissive. That's what James says. That's what Paul says. It's very, very important for us then to learn this lesson, that heavenly wisdom demands that I learn to submit to other people. The next thing that he says about this thing of heavenly wisdom is that the wise person is full of mercy. Full of mercy. I think that it's interesting that he didn't say that wisdom is doing good things for people in need. Now, he could have said that, and that would have been effective. But mercy is not just doing things for people in need. Mercy is to communicate with that person that you are concerned, that you are trying to help because you want to help. Not because that's my duty to help, but because I want to help. Shakespeare had a little part of a poem in which he said, the quality of mercy is twice blessed. And after he describes this, it's falling down like the dew from the heavens. He says it's twice blessed because it blesses him that gives and him that receives. You see, true mercy really is a two-way street. It isn't just the idea of doing something nice or good for another person, but it's the act of communicating to that person, I love you, I'm concerned about you, I want the best for you, I want to serve you. It's not just I will, I will, I will. It's I want, I want, I want. I want to be there for you. Wisdom that comes from heaven, he says, is considerate, it's submissive, it's full of mercy. And then he says it's full of good fruits. Actually, full of mercy and good fruits actually goes together. The idea is that, well, what does an orange tree produce? It produces oranges. That's its natural thing. You don't go to an orange tree and think, well, I'm going to go pick some apples today. No, the natural thing for an orange tree is to produce oranges. The natural thing for the Christian is to produce good fruits. In the 15th chapter of John, Jesus called attention to this. He said, every branch in me that does not bear fruit will be cut off. I am the vine, you are the branches. Bring forth fruit is the idea. And then Paul, in the 5th chapter of Galatians, Paul talks about the fruit of the Spirit. Such things as love and joy and peace and long-suffering and goodness and kindness and self-control. These are the types of things that Paul talks about as the fruit of the Spirit. Wise people produce fruit, good fruit. The next thing that he says is the wisdom from above is impartial. Try as we may, that's not always an easy thing to practice. You see, I'm partial to the people that I like. I'm partial to the people I'm closest to. It's very, very difficult for us to learn to treat people as people need to be treated. Notice I didn't say treat everybody alike. We can't do that. And everybody doesn't need to be treated alike. There are some people who need more attention than other people. There are some people who are more responsible than other people. And we learn to treat these people differently. But we need to treat people in a way that will build them up. To be impartial is really to treat everybody the way each person needs to be treated. And then the next thing he says that the impartial, he says sincere. Sincere. I think there's nothing that kind of gripes us more than to see someone who does a good thing externally, but you know he's absolutely insincere in what he's doing. He may be doing something good, but you know that he doesn't believe in it. He's insincere in what he does. Somehow or another, people who are sincere, people who are impartial, people who produce good fruits, people who are merciful, people who are submissive, people who are considerate, people who are peace-loving, people whose lives and minds are pure. These people are magnetic. They draw us to them. They are lovable. They are likable. Whether we agree with them or not is not the point. The point is that people who have these kinds of characteristics, there's something about those people that when we see them, we know that there is a quality person. There is a person who cares. There is a person who's sincere. There is a person who loves honest, loving relationships. And then finally, James says in this paragraph, peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. Paul has said earlier, whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. We know that. We see that every day. And yet for some reason or another, sometimes we think we can treat people in abusive ways or in unchristian ways, and somehow or another, quote, they deserve it. Somehow or another we think that something good will come out of it, even though we have been unrighteous in the way we treated them. And James ends this little paragraph here by saying, peacemakers who sow peace raise a harvest of righteousness. If you want a congregation that is torn by strife to emerge as a congregation unified, These are good things for that congregation to be practicing. If we know a family that is torn by strife, these are things that that family can use and put into practice each day, and that family will come back together. If we are in business situations and there's distrust and there's corruption and there's all kinds of things that go on in that business that are disruptive, these things practiced will bring order out of that kind of chaos. So, let's read this passage again as we close. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good life, his deeds done in humility. Humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come from heaven, but it's earthly. It's unspiritual. It's of the devil. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, and then it's peace-loving, it's considerate, submissive, full of mercy, good fruits, impartial, and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. If you're not a Christian, and tonight you would desire to become a child of God, we're going to sing an invitation song that suggests the Master's invitation, and you're invited to come. Let's stand together, please, and sing.